My beloved child. You think you know the place you live in. You think the walls around you are silent, harmless, ordinary. But walls listen. Doors remember. And sometimes, the house next door is not just a house. It is a witness. A keeper of truths buried so deep that even time hesitates to touch them. Tonight, I am not here to scare you. I am here to wake you up. Because what is about to be revealed was never meant to be spoken out loud. It was hidden in plain sight, breathing beside you, sharing the same sunlight, the same streets, the same silence. And once you see it, you will never look at normal the same way again. Every second from this moment forward is connected to one decision made years ago. A decision that changed everything. You see, secrets do not knock loudly. They whisper. They slip through cracks. They pretend to be routine. The neighbor who smiles too politely. The window that is always closed. The lights that turn off at the exact same minute every night. People notice these things, then forget them, because forgetting feels safer. But forgetting does not erase the truth. It only feeds it. What you are about to hear is not a story that came from curiosity. It came from fear. Fear of what happens when the truth finally gets tired of hiding. There was a night, very ordinary on the surface, when something small went wrong next door. So small that anyone else would have ignored it. But small things are how massive secrets begin to collapse. Let me take you back to the moment before everything shifted. No alarms. No screams. Just a pause. A silence that felt heavier than sound. The kind of silence that presses against your chest and makes you question why your heart is beating faster. That night, someone noticed a detail that should not exist. A detail that did not belong in a normal home. And once that detail was seen, it could not be unseen. Because it connected to another detail. And then another. Like dots forming a picture no one was ready to face. The truth was not sudden. It was slow. Painfully slow. And that made it far more dangerous. You might be wondering why this matters to you. Why a secret next door should make your pulse rise. Here is the part no one tells you. Secrets do not stay contained. They leak. They spread. They choose witnesses. And once you become one, your life quietly divides into before and after. The people involved believed they had controlled every variable. They believed silence was permanent. They believed routine was protection. But there is always one flaw. One human mistake. One emotional crack. And that crack was not in the house. It was in a person. A person who could no longer carry the weight of knowing. This is where the story tightens its grip. Because what was hidden next door was not just about the past. It was about consequences that were delayed, not cancelled. It was about promises broken in private and paid for in public. And as this secret inches closer to exposure, it is pulling innocent lives into its shadow. The question is no longer whether the truth will come out. The question is who will be standing when it does. Because once the door finally opens, nothing stays the same. And what comes next will test loyalty, courage, and the very idea of safety. Listen carefully now, because this is where patience stops being safe. The silence next door did not break on its own. It was pushed. What looked like coincidence was actually pressure building over years. Every locked room, every avoided question, every carefully timed routine was part of a design meant to keep one thing buried. But designs fail when humans forget one rule. Memory fades, guilt does not. And guilt has a sound. It shows up in hesitation. In shaking hands. In eyes that avoid mirrors. Someone inside that house reached a moment where pretending became harder than confessing. That moment is rare. And when it arrives, it rewrites lives without asking permission. Here is what no one outside understood at first. The secret was not dangerous because of what it was. It was dangerous because of who knew it. Knowledge creates imbalance. Power shifts silently. One person holds truth. Another lives a lie. And between them is a fragile agreement built on fear. The neighbor was not guarding a mystery alone. There were others. Some willing. Some trapped. All connected by a single event that was supposed to disappear forever. But time does not erase events. It only rearranges how they return. And when they return, they demand payment with interest. There was a signal that everything was about to unravel. Not loud. Not dramatic. A small change in behavior that only someone watching closely would notice. The lights stayed on longer. The window opened once. A name was spoken that had not been spoken in years. These are not accidents. These are symptoms. The mind tries to prepare the world before the truth arrives. And the world responds with tension you can feel but not explain. That tension spread beyond the house. It touched streets. It touched conversations. It touched people who had nothing to do with the original secret, yet would soon pay its price. What makes this revelation once in a lifetime is not its scale. It is its timing. If it had surfaced earlier, it could have been controlled. If it surfaced later, it might have died quietly. But now, it sits at the exact intersection of exposure and consequence. The wrong person has started asking the right questions. And the right person has started giving the wrong answers. When that happens, truth does not explode. It bleeds. Slowly. Publicly. Irreversibly. And every drop pulls attention closer, whether people want it or not. You are still here because your mind senses what is coming. The door next door is not just about to open. It is about to reveal who has been standing in front of it this entire time without realizing it. The real shock is not the secret itself. It is how many lives were shaped around it without consent. And as the pressure reaches its peak, one decision will be made. Speak, or stay silent forever. That choice will expose more than a hidden truth. It will expose the cost of hiding it. Something shifted the moment the first truth escaped into the open air. Not shouted. Not announced. Just acknowledged. And acknowledgement is enough to break years of control. The house next door did not react immediately. That is the terrifying part. Silence returned, but it was no longer empty. It was loaded. Every second after that felt borrowed, like time itself was waiting to see who would blink first. Because once a secret realizes it has been seen, it stops hiding and starts choosing its exit. What most people never realize is that exposure begins internally. Long before the world finds out, the person carrying the truth collapses inward. That collapse had already started. The neighbor's routines became imperfect. Steps slowed. Pauses grew longer. Decisions hesitated. These are not random changes. These are signs of a mind negotiating with consequences. And while that negotiation was happening, someone else was watching closely. Not out of curiosity. Out of recognition. Because they had seen this pattern before. And it never ends quietly. Here is where the story turns heavier. The secret was not isolated to one home. It was connected to a promise made between people who believed loyalty could outlive truth. That belief is always wrong. Loyalty bends. Truth does not. One person breaking is enough to trigger a chain reaction. A question leads to another. A memory unlocks another. Suddenly, what was buried becomes mapped. And maps always lead somewhere. In this case, they led directly to a moment everyone thought was forgotten, but was only postponed. The emotional weight now became unbearable. Because exposure does not just reveal facts. It reveals intentions. It reveals who protected whom. Who benefited. Who stayed silent. And who paid without knowing why. This is the kind of revelation that does not shock instantly. It sinks in slowly. It forces people to re-evaluate years of trust. Years of assumptions. Years of comfort built on something false. That is why this moment matters more than the secret itself. It redraws the past. The next step is unavoidable. Once the truth reaches this stage, it demands a witness. Someone outside the circle. Someone who cannot unsee what they now understand. That witness already exists. And when they speak, the secret next door will stop being a rumor, a feeling, a tension. It will become a fact. And facts change everything. The only thing left unanswered is who will survive the truth with their identity intact. Before dawn could soften the night, a realization settled like cold air in the lungs. There was no way back anymore. What had begun as a contained silence had now crossed a line that cannot be erased. The secret was no longer owned. It was shared. And shared truths behave differently. They grow. They demand space. They refuse to stay polite. The house next door still looked the same from the outside, but inside, control was slipping inch by inch. Because the most dangerous moment is not when people panic. It is when they start accepting what they already know. Someone inside that circle made a fatal emotional calculation. They believed partial truth would be safer than total exposure. They believed revealing just enough would calm the pressure. This is where everything fractured. Because truth does not work in fragments. Once released, it connects itself automatically. One detail unlocks another. One explanation creates 3 new questions. And suddenly, the story being told no longer matches the reality being remembered. That gap is where suspicion lives. And suspicion does not sleep. The emotional damage now reached beyond intention. Innocent memories began to feel corrupted. Moments once considered normal started replaying with a darker meaning. Laughter sounded different in hindsight. Kind gestures felt staged. Even silence became suspicious. This is how secrets poison time itself. They move backward and forward at once. People realized they were not just reacting to a current revelation. They were mourning years that were quietly manipulated. That realization cuts deeper than shock ever could. Outside the house, the tension had a strange effect. People felt drawn closer without knowing why. Conversations slowed. Eyes lingered. Everyone sensed that something irreversible was approaching. The witness you heard about earlier understood this too. They knew that once they spoke, they could not step back into ignorance. Speaking would not just expose the secret next door. It would expose everyone who chose comfort over courage. Silence over honesty. Safety over truth. Now the secret stands at the edge of daylight. Not exposed yet. Not hidden anymore. Balanced on a single breath. A single sentence. A single choice. When that choice is made, it will not feel dramatic at first. It will feel quiet. Almost gentle. And then the impact will ripple outward, reshaping trust, identity, and belonging. What happens next will not be about the house next door. It will be about the cost of living beside a truth you never questioned. The moment finally arrived without warning. No countdown. No sign. Just a shift in the air that told everyone, something irreversible had begun. The witness did not raise their voice. They did not dramatize a single word. And that is why it landed so hard. Truth spoken calmly carries a different weight. It does not beg for belief. It assumes it. With that first sentence, the secret next door stopped being protected by uncertainty. It became defined. Sharp. Unavoidable. And once defined, it started collapsing the structure that had held it in place for so long. What followed was not chaos. It was realization. Faces changed before words did. People understood faster than they reacted. Because deep down, they had already felt it. The unease. The inconsistencies. The moments that never fully made sense. Now those fragments aligned into one clear picture. And clarity can be brutal. The secret was no longer about what happened. It was about why it was hidden. Who decided silence was acceptable? Who convinced themselves that damage delayed was damage denied? That illusion shattered completely. Inside the house next door, the cost became visible. Not physical. Emotional. The kind that reshapes how someone sees themselves. The ones who stayed silent realized they were no longer neutral. Silence had chosen a side for them. The ones who believed they were protecting others saw the truth clearly for the first time. They were protecting themselves. That understanding hits harder than accusation ever could. Because it removes excuses. And when excuses disappear, accountability walks in. The ripple spread exactly as feared. Not fast. Thorough. Conversations changed tone. Relationships redefined themselves. Trust, once automatic, now required evidence. People began questioning not just this secret, but what else they had accepted without proof. That is the real power of exposure. It teaches people to look again. And when people start looking again, nothing false survives for long. The house next door lost its invisibility. It became a symbol of something larger. A reminder of how close truth can live to us without being seen. And now, as this chapter closes, one truth remains undeniable. The massive secret was never just next door. It was in the assumptions people made. In the comfort they chose. In the questions they avoided. Exposure did not destroy normal life. It revealed what normal had been built on. What comes after this will not be louder. It will be wiser. Because once you witness a truth like this, you do not return to sleep. You learn how to stay awake. After the truth settled, something unexpected happened. Life did not pause. It adjusted. That is what made everything feel heavier. The world kept moving, but everyone involved carried a new weight they could not put down. The secret had been exposed, yet its echo continued. People realized that knowing the truth is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of responsibility. And responsibility has a way of changing how you breathe, how you listen, how you remember. The house next door no longer felt mysterious. It felt exposed. Ordinary in structure, extraordinary in consequence. Every corner now carried meaning. Every routine looked deliberate in hindsight. This is how revelation works. It turns background noise into signals. People who once blended into normalcy were now seen clearly. Not as villains or heroes, but as humans who made choices when it mattered. Some stood by fear. Some stood by convenience. Very few stood by truth. And that difference separated lives more than distance ever could. There was also something quieter happening beneath the surface. Reflection. People began revisiting their own silences. Their own avoided questions. Their own moments where they sensed something was wrong but chose comfort instead. The secret next door became a mirror. It forced an uncomfortable realization. If this could happen so close, so quietly, then what else had been overlooked? That awareness is unsettling. But it is also powerful. Because once awareness arrives, denial loses its grip. The emotional aftermath did not ask for permission. It arrived in waves. Regret for time lost. Anger for trust misplaced. Relief for finally knowing. These emotions did not cancel each other out. They existed together. That complexity is the true cost of hidden truths. They do not just damage one moment. They tangle years together. Untangling them takes honesty, patience, and courage that cannot be borrowed. Each person had to face what the secret revealed about them personally. And now, standing in the quiet after exposure, one thing becomes clear. The most dangerous secrets are not the ones hidden behind walls. They are the ones hidden inside routines. Inside politeness. Inside the assumption that nothing significant could be happening nearby. The massive secret next door did not change the neighborhood. It changed perception. And once perception shifts, there is no returning to ignorance. There is only forward, with eyes open. There is a strange calm that follows revelation, and this calm is not peace. It is awareness settling into the bones. People began to understand that the secret did not end when it was exposed. It transformed. It moved from being hidden to being remembered. And remembered truths are powerful. They shape behavior without making noise. The house next door stood unchanged, yet everyone who passed it felt something tighten inside. Not fear. Recognition. The kind that reminds you how close reality can be to illusion. What lingered most was not anger, but clarity. Clarity about how easily normal can disguise something massive. How routine can become a shield. How silence can feel responsible while quietly causing damage. The secret forced people to admit something uncomfortable. They had trusted patterns more than instincts. Familiarity more than questions. That realization does not accuse. It educates. And education, once earned this way, cannot be undone. The ones most affected were not those directly involved. It was the observers. The bystanders who realized that distance does not equal safety. That proximity to truth does not guarantee awareness. They began to listen differently. Watch more closely. Ask better questions. This is how impact spreads. Not through shock, but through changed behavior. The massive secret next door became a turning point. A reference. A silent lesson carried forward into future choices. Inside the minds of those who once protected the silence, something fractured permanently. Not publicly. Internally. They could no longer convince themselves they did the right thing. Because the outcome stood in front of them. Exposure did not destroy everything. It corrected it. And that correction revealed the cost of delay. Years of avoidance condensed into a single realization. Truth would have been painful at any time. Waiting only made it heavier. And so the story closes not with an ending, but with a shift. A shift in how people define safety. In how they define trust. In how they define responsibility. The massive secret next door was never about one house, one moment, or one decision. It was about the human habit of assuming nothing extraordinary is happening nearby. That assumption is gone now. Replaced with something quieter. Awareness. And awareness, once awakened, never truly sleeps. There is one final truth that only becomes visible after everything else has settled. Exposure does not give closure. It gives clarity. And clarity demands change. The people who lived beside the secret now understand something they never wanted to learn. Normal life is not proof of safety. Silence is not proof of innocence. Familiarity is not proof of truth. These realizations do not shout. They stay. They reshape how choices are made long after the moment has passed. The house next door no longer carries mystery, but it carries meaning. It stands as evidence that massive truths do not announce themselves. They wait. They blend in. They rely on distraction and comfort to survive. What made this secret powerful was not how long it stayed hidden. It was how easily it was accepted as impossible. That assumption protected it more than any lock ever could. And once that assumption collapsed, everything built on it followed. People now move differently. They listen for pauses. They notice patterns. They question what once felt automatic. This is not paranoia. This is awareness sharpened by experience. The massive secret did not teach fear. It taught responsibility. Responsibility to ask. Responsibility to notice. Responsibility to speak when silence starts feeling heavy instead of peaceful. These are lessons learned slowly, but they last longer than shock ever could. The most emotional realization comes quietly. The truth did not arrive to punish. It arrived to correct. It exposed harm, yes, but it also exposed resilience. The ability to face reality without denial. The courage to rebuild trust honestly instead of pretending it was never damaged. That courage is rare. And once discovered, it changes the direction of lives in ways that cannot be measured immediately. This is where the story truly ends. Not with revelation, but with awareness passed forward. The massive secret next door is no longer a threat. It is a reminder. A reminder that what we ignore does not disappear. It waits. And what we choose to face, even when uncomfortable, becomes the foundation for something stronger. You may walk past familiar places tomorrow. But you will never see them the same way again. What remains after everything is not noise, but memory. Memory settles deeper than shock ever could. People may stop talking about what happened, but they will never stop measuring moments against it. Every quiet street. Every closed window. Every familiar face now carries an invisible question. Not suspicion. Awareness. And awareness is irreversible. The massive secret next door has permanently altered how silence is interpreted. Silence is no longer empty. It is examined. Time moves forward, but it does not erase the imprint left behind. It sharpens it. The events that once felt distant now feel instructional. They remind people that truth does not arrive when invited. It arrives when it must. And when it does, it exposes not only facts, but priorities. Who mattered? What was protected? What was sacrificed for comfort? Those answers stay long after details fade. There is a quiet strength that forms in the aftermath. People begin trusting themselves more. Their instincts. Their unease. Their questions. The lesson becomes personal. If something feels hidden, it probably is. If something feels wrong, it deserves attention. The secret next door did not create this awareness. It revealed the cost of ignoring it. That cost will not be paid again easily. The most powerful change is invisible. It happens inside decisions yet to be made. Moments where silence is an option, but honesty is chosen instead. Moments where comfort is tempting, but clarity wins. These moments do not make headlines. They prevent them. That is how impact truly works. Quietly. Persistently. Permanently. And so, the final echo of this story is simple and unshakable. The massive secret was exposed, but its greatest effect was not exposure. It was transformation. A transformation in how truth is valued. How silence is questioned. How proximity no longer guarantees innocence. This story ends here. But its lesson continues wherever someone chooses awareness over assumption.